Okay, let me get everything going first. You know how this goes down. All right, we're recording. We got it. Yes. 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 Stop. I don't feel like my mic is close enough. Let's pause. That's better. All right, y'all. So let's start off with a little intro like we always do. Have you started meditating more? Have you been on your yoga mat and you're in Shavasana and you sense that you have almost lost track of time? You didn't fall asleep, but maybe you lost a little track of time. Maybe you walked out of a meditation session, a yoga class, feeling really connected, like almost like you've peered away a layer of darkness and you're getting closer and closer to that space of goodness that we're born with. Y'all, you may have just entered one of the limbs of yoga, Dhyana. Let's get going.
So you've been to a few or maybe many yoga classes and you are hooked. Somehow you feel better, kinder, more connected to yourself and those around you. Your friends view you as a hippie now, and your parents, well, they think it's a phase. Regardless, when you are on your mat, you are home. Yoga teachers and students, come learn how yoga can help you navigate the daily grind, breakups, your anxiety from a place of clarity and compassion. Welcome to the Modern Yogi Podcast, hosted by me, Laura Siljander. Misfits, earthlings, yogis, take a deep breath, check in to see how you're doing, body, mind, and soul, because you have arrived.
I just love it when the beat drops. Just love it when the beat drops. I must miss music festivals. Yogis, welcome back to the Modern Yogi Podcast. I'm Laura, like I've already said. I just wanted to throw this out there. Most of you listen to this on Spotify, Stitcher, somewhere else, iTunes, whatever. But right now, if you want to, you get to see my face on YouTube. There's an unedited version of this. Some of you are watching it where you can see the bloopers, the weird faces that I make. I'm very animated, apparently. But if you're into more of a raw kind of feel, this is pretty raw. I'm in my Airbnb right now recording this, no makeup on, and you're going to hear my ums, likes, and so's. It's just not as clean. So if you're more into the like, I want to get my 15, 20-minute podcast, I want it clean, then you're in the right place. Stay on your podcast. But if you want something it's just a little longer, but a little more raw, you can go to my YouTube channel, The Modern Yogi, and then you'll see that there's a playlist that says The Modern Yogi Podcast, unedited. Y'all, I'm glad you're here. I know I say this often, but the fact that you are tuning in and making time to do your yoga practice, like, can we just say hallelujah? I would say it's kind of strange that you are taking time out of your day to be better, to learn something, maybe to figure out how to suffer less, to know thyself a little bit more, to do the self study, the svadhyaya, to learn about what maybe your truth is or your satya. I'm glad you're here. I'm really glad you're here. And I'm glad you're making the time to do this, because by you doing the work, this invites other people to do the work. By you living in such a way that's true and authentic, you invite other people to do that. So what you're doing, I think, is a big deal. All right, but we're not here to talk about all of that. We're here to talk about the 8 limbs of yoga. We are on the 7th limb, Dhyana. It's the 7th limb. So here's what's pretty cool. The previous limbs prepare the mind, body, and soul for a deeper level of meditation and consciousness. So let's think about that. The previous limbs prepare the body, the mind, and the soul for deeper levels of meditation and consciousness. The yamas and niyamas teach us to live in an ethical way. It unveils truths about our lives and how we're living. Then yamas and niyamas really take a mirror back at you and say, is this your truth? Is this bringing you to your highest self? Are you finding that you're not content a lot? Are you realizing that you're not spending enough time with self-study? Like you don't really even know yourself. Do you even know what your satya, your truths are? Are you harming things or people or the environment more than you need to or should? It's just questioning these things that we were given to us as a culture and asking, does this work? So it's really layering this foundation, this beautiful foundation for our yoga practice. And then we get into the asanas, the body. This is preparing the body to not only, be have better balance, to be healthier, to be stronger, to have better posture, to be, those are all really great things that asana does, but it's also not random. These postures are meant for our bodies to be able to sit in meditation for longer with less aches and pains, which is why we do a lot of like hip opening and shoulder opening and all these things to make sure our core is strong so we can sit up nice and tall. I'm not talking you need to be in full lotus pose pretzel, but to not have as many aches or pains in the body. So that's a less of a distraction from the consciousness to the deep meditation states we're trying to get in. We don't have these like as many aches or pains. Pranayama, so the next limb of yoga, allows us to focus on slowing the mind, or maybe with like Kapalabhati, breath of fire, or Ujjayi, the ways to get the mind stimulated. Pranayama either slows or stimulates the mind. So pranayama is literally manipulating the prana, the life force in our bodies. So it manipulates our mind. I already went over that, but in the podcast about it. But if we're feeling tired and sluggish, that's why we have pranayamas that heat us up. If we have a lot of anxiety and stress, that's why we have a lot of pranayamas that chill us out. And that also is preparing the mind for, you guessed it, meditation. And then we have pratyahara, withdrawing from the senses. You know how we're always drawing our senses outward because, that's what we're trained to do. Am I safe? Is a car going to hit me? Is someone talking about me? Our senses are out. Pratyahara says, okay, go to a safe space and try to withdraw all of this chaos, either around us or internally. Draw the senses inward. Draw the senses inward, less output, more focus on our internal environment. Dharana focuses the mind. Dharana focuses the mind. That's the next limb. It gives us one thing to focus on. Patanjali also gave us Dharana because it gives us, my guess, this is anecdotal, it gives us permission to mess up. It gives us permission to say, oh, my mind's wandering. Time to bring it back. Time to bring it back. Oh, my mind's wandering again. Oh, bring it back. And that's the practice of Dharana. Remember, it's like the training before the soccer game. Like you got to go to practice, you got to practice your soccer drills. And then Dhyana is like the game. Like you're in the game now. You're harnessing the skills and the lessons that you learned in Dharana, and it flows into the game. Dhyana. So Dhyana, well, we're going to talk about this, obviously, that this is the topic for today, but that's why I think Patanjali was really smart about organizing this. Our foundations of how we're living our lives, move the body to calm our bodies down, to even calm the brain down even further with pranayamas, withdraw from all of the prana we're putting out and draw the prana, that energy back in. Then he gives us Dharana. Focus. Try to focus on this thing. It's okay if you mess up. Just focus. So Dhyana. Dhyana. What is it? It's unbroken and an effortless flow of concentration. It's effortless. You typically go from Dharana, this one point of focus where you're kind of like trying to focus the mind, but you keep having to bring it back. Dhyana is when it's no longer a big deal. It's effortless. It's unbroken. It can last anywhere from 3 seconds, maybe 2 seconds, to 30 minutes. The time is a little bit irrelevant right now. The mind is fixed and it's steady on the object or tool used in Dharana. So remember in Dharana, we talked about different types of meditation styles. You can do mindfulness meditation, breath meditation, body scans, chakra scans, visualizations, tritaka, where you're gazing at something. You're using some sort of method to focus the mind on, instead of a million things, you're trying to focus it on less. Trying to focus it on less. In Dhyana, it's focused and it's not taking effort for you to bring your focus back. It's focused. It feels effortless. Please know if you haven't been here before that it's coming. You just got to practice it. It's like if you want to touch your toes and you got tight hamstrings, well, you got to keep stretching and then maybe one day you'll touch your toes or maybe not. In the East, or I guess I should say in the ancient texts, this is what Patanjali is saying is true meditation. Patanjali says this is meditation. Patanjali says Dharana, one point of focus, the limb before this, where we're trying to focus on one thing, we kind of keep bouncing back. That's the step before meditation. So that's what Patanjali says, that dhyana is true meditation. Now, I'd like to also bring in that the research here in the West considers meditation dharana, that one point of focus where you're trying to bring it back. That's not up for me to tell you what to believe. I'm just going to deliver the info. There's so many benefits that's been researched about dharana and how it's so helpful for the mind and stress and immune system and all of that. But it is a little bit of Patanjali says this and the West believes this. So I want you to just find your truth, whatever it is. So Patanjali says Dharana is the step before meditation. West says, or research says, nope, Dharana is meditation. Just thought you should know. So again, I want to kind of bring this back that Dharana from Patanjali says that it's like a training or a drill to get your mind kind of prepared for the next limb, which is dhyana. So how do you know if you've ever been in dhyana before? You lose track of time during your meditation or practice. You lose all track of time. You're like, was I meditating for 5 seconds or 5 minutes or 5 hours? Okay, not that extreme, maybe like 15 minutes, but you do have the sense that you have lost track of time. When your regular body or emotional aches or pains no longer disturb you. So you don't feel that like lower back pinch anymore. You lose track of that. Your anxiety, it's quiet. Your running list or your running checklist of all the things you have to get done is quiet. All your beliefs, if you're a good or bad meditator, quiet. In dhyana, they're quiet. When you're meditating in dhyana, sometimes you can forget where you are. It can be similar to how sleeping feels. I've also read and heard that folks have a sensation of leaving the body, like you're almost leaving the body, going somewhere else. And when you come out of it, you have this deep, deep feeling of yoga or union connection. And that union connection can be with you and the divine, you and God. Remember, I'm not telling you who God is, or you with yourself. Maybe you connected with your highest self. So you leave this experience feeling very connected. If you've never been in Dhyana, I don't want to say it's a goal because Dhyana only kind of works when it's effortless, not strained. And sometimes when I say goal, people are like, all right, like pedal to the metal, like I want to master this. I'm like, there's no mastering yoga. If you practice Dharana enough, Dhyana's around the corner. I would say that. It's not unattainable, not even if you're ADHD, not even if you're like in the top 10 percentile for being the most ADHD. This is why Patanjali gave us these other limbs to take before. And then sometimes, maybe like anything else, you get faster. Maybe you don't have to practice as much asana, pranayama, or dharana to drop into dhyana. Um, just like anything else, if you've been meditating a while, you'll notice that you can reach a place of where it's more quiet, more peaceful, a little bit faster. Just like anything else you practice, you go to the gym, you lift the weights, and then you realize I could probably add about 5 pounds. It's just like that. Our brain is just like that muscle. So I also want to talk to you a little bit about why, like, so what? Like, what's the cool thing about Dhyana? Like, why is this such like a goal that we have? Like, what's the big deal? So what, Laura? I don't get why this is so cool to you. I want to talk to you about why it matters. And I'm going to give you what the ancient texts say and what the research side says. The research side, we'll start with that, is when you reach this state of contemplation, we become more aware of our inner and outer experiences. What I mean by that is we become more self aware of emotions, feelings, not only our emotions and feelings, but those of others. And I don't just mean other people, I mean other beings like animals. I mean, you become more connected to your environment and grass and trees and ocean and mountains and that flower growing outside. You become more aware. You become more self aware, and that also brews compassion for those around you. That's researched. More meditation equals more compassion, more self awareness. Meditation over time allows us to become more compassionate, like I already said. But what I want to say about this is our inner critics are quieter, our ego is quieter. Because meditation encourages non judgmental feelings towards yourself and others. You'll notice yoga as a whole, people call it like woo woo kindergarten bullshit, but it's trying to find that space where we have become we've built up so many walls because of all the suffering we've gone through our lives that we almost forget what it's like to be that child who is loving, that child who says it's okay to feel feelings. But as we get older, we have that inner critic that becomes louder and louder. In meditation, we observe that inner critic. In dhyana, we smash that inner critic. It's really important because if you think about, gosh, I want to say we have, is it 70,000 thoughts a day? And I wonder if even half of those thoughts are kind, are compassionate, whether it's about ourselves or others. That's a lot of thoughts. Meditation tempers your reaction, so it makes you less reactive. Research also shows meditation reduces stress and it boosts your immune system. But the ancient texts say that when we experience a state of dhyana that our Atman is present. So, an Atman can be referred to as like your highest self, capital S self, or your soul. You can think of your Atman in a few different ways. So, if you haven't listened to your the self versus self, capital S self, episode, I'll link to it in the show notes. But I didn't make it up. I heard it first from Eckhart Tolle, and it has been a really life changing um, belief system, I would say, or thought process. So your lowercase, I'll say it really fast, lowercase s self are all the labels that were assigned in this earth. So if you're watching me on this channel, I'm blonde, I'm considered female, I'm considered like in my 30s, I'm given all of these labels. And we spend most of our time in this lowercase s self cultivating these labels as mom, sister, aunt, student, teacher, yogi, like all of these labels that we were given to us. We spend a lot of time here nurturing them. And then our capital S self is when all of those labels are stripped away, all of them. What's left? And that is your capital S self. That is what you take with you into your next life or heaven or whatever, that's the soul. Doesn't care if you're blonde or brunette, doesn't care if you're short or tall. So the ancient texts say that when we get into this space of dhyana, that higher self, capital S self, that soul is present. We can tap into that. I've also read that when you reach a state of dhyana, it brings you closer to that place of good. The Buddha talks about how we were all born with this goodness inside of us. We are actually good at our core. But then we suffer and we learn, what suffering is, and we start to build attachments around not suffering. So we do whatever we can to not suffer. It makes sense. You don't want to be hungry. You don't want to be hurt. But then we build unhealthy attachments and then we suffer even more because of those attachments. And we get further and further from this space of good because we build up walls. This is kind of what I mean about that, like yogi, like when people think like yoga is kind of woo woo or kindergarten, whatever. It's because as a kiddo, like you're good. You hopefully don't know suffering unless you did, you grew up in certain households or in a certain environment. But we get sometimes as adults further and further from that space of good. And sometimes when we go into a yoga class, we're reminded that, oh my gosh, my inner critic is such a jerk. This inner critic my ego is trying to keep me safe, but it's keeping me from connecting with that space of goodness inside of us. So Dhyana brings you back to that space of goodness. Isn't this a really magical place to be? It like makes you, maybe this gives you more of a goal to like, okay, I'm going to meditate. I'm actually going to do it. So here's what I like to teach to my students because we go through meditation. I teach them all how to meditate. I give them different Dharana practices and I ask them to meditate or participate in a Dharana activity during different times of the day. So you can figure out and they can figure out what works for you, but even more importantly, what doesn't. Okay, in the mornings, I like literally fall asleep in my meditations. Probably not a good idea to do it in the mornings. Maybe wait till late morning. I also encourage them to experiment with visualization, experiment with singing bowls, experiment with different styles of meditation to see what works for them at the moment. Sometimes it's mantra. Sometimes it's mantra and mudras because we need a little bit of both. Sometimes it's metta, that loving kindness meditation. But to try different styles and know that as your meditation practice evolves, so will your styles. If the mind is too jumpy when you try to meditate on your own, do a guided. It's not a big deal. It's just your ego telling you that you're not good enough to do it by yourself. That's why there are so many guided meditations out there. So I really encourage you to try different techniques, try different times a day, see what works and what doesn't work for you. And when you have a crummy session and you label the session as bad, know that that's just your ego trying to keep you safe. And that meditation actually isn't supposed to be good nor bad. That's why it's a practice. And know that if your mind is jumping around from thing to thing, it's your Dharana practice. And maybe one day, effortless concentration will kick in, Dhyana, and you'll find this space of yoga or huge, this connection, whether that's 5 seconds or 5 minutes. So I want to leave you with that. We only have one more limb of yoga to cover, Samadhi. And if you're planning on tuning into that one, I would recommend that you listen to, gosh, now I'm forgetting the title. Oh, gosh, The Ego Baby. I think that's the title. I'll link to it in the show notes. Oh, I should be more organized. And that's my ego trying to keep me safe. So, yogis, the next week we're going to be talking about Samadhi. That's the last limb of yoga. If you could listen to that podcast about the ego, I'll link to it in the show notes. And we'll be done with this series. It's kind of exciting and kind of sad. I have some stuff planned, thinking about the chakras, thinking about more spiritual episodes coming up. A lot of you seem to feel like you're kind of alone in your spiritual path. And you're like, I'm feeling all these things and I don't know how to process them. So I want to kind of chat about that too. So more spiritual jelly or spiritual misfits episodes are on the way. If there's some sort of concept, yoga, mental health, or spirituality, compassion, whatever. What do you eat? I don't know. Please DM me on practice_compassion. I would love to hear from you of what you want to know. So again, try different ways to meditate. Know that Patanjali was super smart and put these limbs together in a beautiful way that it sets that foundation. And then we keep just getting into deeper and deeper levels of consciousness to hopefully suffer less, to find more peace with ourselves and peace with our environment. And that includes people. All right, yogis, don't forget to practice that compassion with your thoughts, Notice when the cranky ones come up. Practice that compassion with your speech. There's been a lot of hate speech. Can we counter that with more love, more compassion, less reactivity? And then practice that compassion with your actions. So taking the time to do some svadhyaya, taking the time to meditate. I'm so proud of you for being here. Namaste. Shalom and pura vida. Still here, I see. Or you just haven't turned it off yet. Just a few announcements if you want it. I am in the middle of a big project and I wanted to share it with you. The name of it now, which is evolving, is called Yoga Moments. And it is going to be a daily devotional about topics of spirituality, self-compassion, and feeling your feelings and stress and anxiety. And it's going to be a devotional that's out loud. So it's going to be recorded and it's something that you can do every day. It's going to be the episode or the intentions are going to be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes and I read a quote, we do some mindfulness practices and then there'll be journal prompts and then I'm going to provide a journal as well. So it's gonna be a really special project. I know that and I used to be Christian, and I loved doing my devotionals where I read some spiritual texts and got to kind of marinate on it, but now that I'm not Christian anymore, but I'm still really spiritual, I want something, and there's nothing out there, and so I just wanted to do it in a way where I could journal, I can read spiritual texts, but I can also set daily intentions for myself. So know that yoga moment is coming up. It's going to be a journal and app. That's what I'm kind of thinking it's going to be. So feel free to ask me more questions about that if you are interested. It's in the works. It's going to be a little while, but I'm just putting that on your radar, which is pretty exciting. But cool. All right, y'all. I'll talk to you next week.